I'm about to go where no man has ever boldly gone before. Yeah, I know. I didn't say that perfectly, but then again, I'm not Captain Kirk, and I'm not captaining the Enterprise. But I am John Stark from movieguy.com, and believe it or not, this is a review of Star Trek The Motion Picture Director's Edition? Okay. That's an interesting way of writing director's cut, or avoiding writing director's cut, is to put director's edition. I was like, this will be interesting. This should just be a fun thing. I've seen some of the original Star Trek films, but not actually the first one. I didn't grow up on Shatner's Star Trek, so I caught on to it later on. So actually, I've never seen Star Trek the Motion Picture, so I wouldn't know what the changes were between the director's edition and the non-director's edition. But I did notice it popped up on my Paramount Plus as leaving soon, and I was so curious as to whether or not that edition would actually have audio description with it, because usually the director's editions, the special cuts, the unrateds, they end up not always having audio description. But Apocalypse Now Redo does. And turns out, so does the director's edition of Star Trek. I don't know why it's leaving Paramount. I mean, Star Trek is... Literally, I see so many people when they're like, should I subscribe to Paramount Plus? And their friends are like, do you like Star Trek? Like, that's like the only reason to subscribe to Paramount Plus. So what, there's a Star Trek film that's leaving Paramount Plus soon? That doesn't make any sense. These films should be like permanently forever on Disney Plus. It should be like if somebody ever told me like Cinderella was leaving Disney Plus, I'd be like, to go where? Like, why? Where is it going? So yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It should permanently live on Paramount Plus, but I guess it's leaving soon. So I decided to watch it because I'd never seen it before, and I wanted to see the director's edition. I think that was a mistake. I should say, I'm not going to grade this. It's my first time watching it, and I have some issues with the film that I feel like I wouldn't necessarily have otherwise. I feel like my grade wouldn't reflect the actual like quality of the film. I thought the film itself was fine. It had potential. It didn't like blow my mind. We've definitely had better Star Treks later on down the line. But as far as like coming out of, a TV show into a film, I thought this was doing a good job. I guess structurally by introducing the characters, but also kind of keeping that fan base in there. Like we kind of knew who these people were, and they were just kind of introducing you to this story while also trying to reach a wider audience. But man, this is not a film whose soundtrack has been preserved well over time. And I don't even know if it's a film whose soundtrack ever could have been preserved. There were times where there were characters speaking that didn't sound like they had microphones. Like they didn't sound like they were mic'd. They sounded like they were like their voices were being picked up by ambient microphones, or like another actor's microphones. Like they ran out of mics on set or something, and like some red shirts in the background, and he's like talking, but he's talking in that way that sounds like everything else around him but him has a microphone. It's it's very weird, and there are some times where it's really muffled and it's hard to understand. I came out of there thinking that Leonard Nimoy like sounded a hell of a lot more like Morgan Freeman than I thought he ever did. So I really don't think this is a soundtrack that has been preserved or restored or anything. And I don't know how much of that has to do with the director's cut, because sometimes the extra footage that they end up splicing back in is not necessarily, with TLC taken care of. So yeah, I would have a hard time fairly grading this film, because it really could just be the lack of love and care given to this film, and it could just be that time has left the print of this film in such a disarray that it wasn't a fun experience. I don't know that the film was bad, but like my experience watching the film was kind of terrible. I actually enjoyed the audio description more than I did the film. Because the audio description, again, this is one of those cases when you watch an old film and the audio description sounds like it was recorded yesterday, but the film sounds like it was recorded and like you found it as some sort of like historical relic. They invaded some ancient Egyptian tomb and they found a mummy and he had a copy of Star Trek with him. It's like, well, I wonder what the sound's gonna be like on this one. Yeah, it's this soundtrack was rough. It's one of the worst ones I've heard on an old film that I've watched recently, and I've done quite a bit of older reviews. So when I say that, I don't say it lightly. And I've seen some films that don't even have audio description have better soundtracks than this. This is a soundtrack that needs some love. And the funny thing is that there are moments in it where the soundtrack is great. Like there are a couple of scenes where the soundtrack is like amazing. And it's like, how is the soundtrack so good in this scene, but like for the last 20 minutes it's been awful, and it's been a struggle trying to understand what people are saying, and people sound, it's like I can't even understand what they're saying, like their dialogue, they're just like mumbling out, and then it sounds garbled, and it sounds like it's from, like it's crackly because the speakers are. Anyway, it wasn't a fun experience. So, it's apparently going to leave Paramount Plus soon. So if you don't jump on that ball, you won't get this weird ass experience, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend. But I did like the audio description, but again, I have nobody to thank because, it just kind of said like credits, and then the narrator just died after he announced the credits were starting. And then Paramount Plus did what it did, and it kicks you out and it forces you to watch something else. So yeah, I don't know if it ever says the name of the narrator, but it didn't describe any of the credits. It just credits and then silence. And then about 10 seconds I got kicked into something else. So but whoever did it, good job. I feel like I'd heard that voice before. I feel like he's done a Star Trek show, actually. If I had to put my nose on it, I would say he's done a Star Trek show. But anyway, I know that this franchise is a visual feast, and there were some cool things being described. I don't know that I entirely, having seen it before, would describe the Enterprise as being teardrop shaped. But I don't know that that's the worst way to describe the Enterprise. I would have to ask a blind person who's never seen the Enterprise, like, what is it that you think of when you hear teardrop shape? Like, do you understand what the Enterprise looks like from that? Or not? Like, does that work for you? Because I feel like teardrop shape doesn't necessarily cover like the zigzag that it has, kind of like the dual layer, double level effect. When I think of a teardrop, I kind of think of just a teardrop, not like a multi-tiered leveled thing. Anyway, I guess those are my thoughts. Like I said, I'm not going to grade this. So my grade for Star Trek, the Motion Picture Director's Edition, is nothing. If I had to guess, my experience currently would put it around like a C minus to a C. I'm gonna guess that all things considered, if the soundtrack was better, it would be at least a C plus, probably a B minus. So I don't think I'm gonna love this movie. I felt like we've had more exciting Star Trek films. This was probably on the slower end of Star Trek films. So, but I enjoyed the cast. I enjoyed Nichelle Nichols. Getting to listen to her performance as Uhura after she recently passed. That was poignant. And Shatner actually does a good job as Kirk. So I know we always make fun of his acting, but it actually works. So that's it for me in this review. You can let me know what you think in the comments. Throw a like and a subscribe. I'm at 60 subscribers, so we're moving on up. Sometimes I look at these other channels and I'm like, oh, that would be nice. One day. One day. And you can always check out my website, macthemovieguy.com. The audio description project will let you know what has audio description and where you can watch it. And theadna.org will let you know what the narrators are up to. Might even let you know who did the director's edition of this. I don't even know if it's different than the original, like, non-director's edition. Maybe it's the same person. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. Godspeed. Vulcan hand salute. I'm going to put it in front of my face so that way I'm sure it's there. And then I'm gonna peace out of this awkward video and go review something else.